Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Everyday Night. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jeff.
And Jeff, tomorrow is Thanksgiving. So this is our first Thanksgiving themed episode. And I see you're thankful for artificial lighting.
Yeah, I'm moving things around on my screen to make room for your familiar face, but it's so different color screens are popping up, and I've got a big monitor, so it changes the lighting significantly. But I think I'm set now. So
Okay.
I think I look lifelike now.
We can fix it in post.
So. You've got post? I don't have any post.
Oh.
Kellogg's.
Kellogg's. Oh,
no post.
So as I was saying before I interrupted myself, tomorrow's Thanksgiving, so we thought we would do an episode about Thanksgiving, both the holiday and the act of giving thanks,
right,
and the practice of giving thanks and how it relates to the virtues.
Right. And this was actually, I should get a little shout out to my beautiful and intelligent wife who when we were talking about how can we relate Thanksgiving to the virtues, and I turned to my wife and I said, so how does this relate to the virtues? And she sat for a minute and then threw out like 3 different ideas, and I passed them along, and this seems to be the most appropriate. So
very good.
Credit to her.
Are you thankful for, say, having a beverage to hand?
I'm always thankful to have a beverage to hand, especially when someone else is providing it.
And do you have one of those beverages tonight?
I do. And in the spirit of the episode, it is wild turkey, rare breed on the rocks. And you, what have you concocted this evening?
I have a cocktail known as an artist's special. It was written about by Harry McAlone of Harry's New York Bar in Paris in his book. He didn't invent this cocktail. He credited it to artists' bars in the Pigalle area of Paris as something that was very popular. And I've tried it, and I actually rather like it. And it is half ounce of.
I bet it's bitter and full of jealousy.
No, actually, but it will hit you in the perceptions.
Okay.
So, it's a half ounce of lemon juice, half ounce of what's supposed to be red currant syrup, but that's really difficult to find. So I use a high quality grenadine, ounce and a half of sherry.
Okay.
And an ounce and a half of sherry finished Irish whiskey.
Wow. And this is from Paris, you said?
Yeah.
Oh, very cosmopolitan.
Yeah, exactly. So happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. Cheers. It's been sitting in its ice for a little while.
Is that a good thing?
Well, it's a little weak for a rare breed.
Okay.
But it will suit me.
Thanksgiving.
And we want it to be clear that we are calling to the myth of Thanksgiving and not the actual probable circumstance of the first Thanksgiving, but where the Thanksgiving myth comes from.
Well, and that relates to the virtue of veritas, or honesty.
Yes.
That there's a book that I recommend to people called Lies My Teacher Told Me. And it's actually quite a few years old now, but really influential, really good book. It was an analysis of the most widely used history textbooks in high schools in the country.
Yeah.
And what they got wrong. And there's a lot they got wrong. And there's a lot of debate going on in the public arena right now about what is taught. and what
Mhm.
is not taught, and what should be taught and what shouldn't be taught. And um, honesty is good. It's important. When you every
You don't really
culture,
have it. You don't really have an education if you haven't been taught the truth.
right? You have an indoctrination.
Exactly.
You have now every culture has its mythology. Every person has lies they tell themselves. But one of the virtues, and I think one of the first virtues, is honesty, because without that you can't improve, um you can't be humble in the way of recognizing your strengths and weaknesses. You can't um and it takes courage to be honest with yourself about yourself. So I think it's important, and it's important in a debate, national debate, or any kind of debate, any kind of decision making. Honesty is essential.
Mhm.
And and I remember once posting something online, and I posted to substantiate this, and I always I always differentiate between an opinion and a conclusion that's based on facts and data. um, De gustibus non est disputandum. People argue
Right.
about taste all the time, although
Right.
it's a matter of opinion. But conclusions should be based on data, and you can argue about the interpretation of data, but you have to be arguing from the same set of facts. And one person responded that, oh, peer-reviewed studies are the worst. They don't prove anything.
Then what exactly do you use as a criteria for proof?
Yeah, exactly. Now, I understand the problems with predatory journals and with the publisher perish and all of that, but still, that's where real research is evaluated and proven.
Well,
And
because it's competitive.
right,
I mean, the peers who are reviewing your material are trying to tear it apart or
well,
support their own or whatever. It's
they're trying to make it better.
well, I
They're
mean,
not trying to say your stuff is bad in order to promote themselves. They're trying to make the work better.
oh well, there's some of the former,
There's some,
but
but
to me only reinforces its validity.
right. But I've been a peer reviewer for journal articles,
Okay.
and I looked at stuff and I said, here's the problems with what you're doing, with what your research. And I
Right.
was asked to
You can
be
certainly talk about
right,
your data collection methods and flaws and that kind of stuff.
right.
Yeah.
And they ended up in the final one that went to print, was accepted for publication. They eliminated a whole section, largely based on my comment that this isn't valid. The way you're structuring this isn't valid, and so on. But it's about honesty. It's about truth. So we can't completely disregard the true origins of Thanksgiving, as opposed to the myth. And we don't need to necessarily belabor it, but people should understand, if they don't by now, that the reality depicted in Addams Family Values, the second Addams Family movie, where Wednesday and Pugsley are playing Native Americans in this pageant, go off script and tie up and burn down, and and
Right.
it's a great scene. It's a great scene in that. And that's what the Wampanoag people who met the Pilgrims don't consider Thanksgiving to be a holiday. They consider it to be a day of mourning. And tomorrow is the 400th anniversary of supposedly what's the first Thanksgiving in
1621. Yeah.
So it's important to understand the truth of it, so that the things we're thankful for, we can be honestly thankful for, and the things that and honestly, I'm one of the things I'm thankful for is the opportunity to talk about the chivalric virtues.
Yeah.
And to do it in this forum. So
Well, we just before we went on, we both did some sort of cursory research on the first Thanksgiving, and just to be clear that from what I read, the very first, the 400th anniversary, the first Thanksgiving was a relatively peaceful. I mean, it was a. You pointed out that they were not at war. The sort of widely divergent narratives for the first Thanksgiving, neither one is perfectly correct. It wasn't the Pilgrims were there and immediately started taking the land and kicking the Native Americans off. And it certainly was not the Native Americans welcoming the new white people who were going to civilize them with open arms. It was neither of those things. It was a cooperation by two people, neither of which completely understood their roles in this new world. But just to set this aside, that the first Thanksgiving, you said that the Pilgrims collected their first harvest and celebrated by firing their guns and shooting cannon in their celebration. And the Native Americans showed up to investigate and were probably ready to fight.
Yeah.
But when they got there, they found out that there was tables set up with food, and it was just a communal sort of feast day. And they were a little confused. And the Pilgrim said, "Oh, no, please, come join us." And while the Pilgrims probably sat at a table, the Native Americans probably sat nearby on the ground, but they shared their food, and it was relatively peaceful, and they left peacefully.
Yeah.
And then 10 years later, when mass immigration began, is when things go bad.
Yeah.
Well,
and actually 100 years earlier, because the Wampanoags had and other tribes had contact with white Europeans, and it had not gone well. And the reason that there was room for the Pilgrims is that there was some empty land because of how many people had died. But the chief of the Wampanoag was urged by his people repeatedly to just kill off the Europeans and kick them out because they didn't trust them. But he thought that an alliance with them was better. And the current chief of the Wampanoag said that the Europeans had their wives and children with them, so they didn't think they would make war because the Wampanoag didn't bring their wives and children to make war. So there was a lot of misunderstanding. I think one of the books I recommend to people is Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. And that book is not without controversy, but it certainly is an alternate view of the God-given manifest destiny of white Christian Europeans, white Protestant Europeans, because really the Thanksgiving holiday that was declared by Lincoln as a common day that everybody could celebrate following the Civil War, was also because the white Protestant majority in the country was concerned about the sudden influx of European Catholics and Jews.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to reinforce the supremacy of the white European Protestants who civilized or destroyed the Native Americans. So everybody enjoy your cranberry sauce.
Right. So now with all of that in our minds, and it's worth knowing all of that. And you can celebrate the day of Thanksgiving, and it has become more of a sort of generic giving of thanks day. It's
Right.
not really a patriotic holiday anymore. It's still kind of a religious holiday. Because I mean, they were giving thanks to God, right? The pilgrims, right? But it's become more of a generic, what are you thankful for? What do you know, what did think about what's good in your life that you can be thankful for, rather than for one day worrying about all the things that you wish you had or haven't done or regrets or whatever. Give thanks. Say thank you to the good things that are part of your life, family, and if that's a good thing, extrication from family, if that's a better thing.
The fact that being thankful for the fact that Bruce Willis makes 20 crappy movies a year.
Does he that many?
I actually I kept seeing trailers for Bruce Willis movies, and so I actually graphed out how many movies he's made a year since whatever, for the past like 20 years, and it's been steadily
Since
increasing.
Moonlighting?
Steadily increasing. He makes, and none of them are any good. And he always plays the same character, and he's maybe it's not 20 a year, but wow, he makes a lot of movies a year.
Yeah, and it looks like he puts in about 3 days worth of filming, and although
phones in about 3 days of filming.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I don't see him act anymore. He just plays himself.
Yeah.
There's while we're on the topic of movies, a big The Harder They Fall has been much talked about lately.
I would like to watch that. It looks very stylish. It looks really good. I'm a little disappointed that they cast Zazie Betts as Shotgun Mary.
Yeah,
because she's
like a 200-pound, 6-foot tall.
Yeah, and Zazie Betts is maybe 105 pounds and petite and pretty.
They found a bunch of historical names and then completely ignored their actual history.
Yeah, but I think representation is good.
Misrepresentation, I guess, if that's what it is.
Well, we're talking about mythology, and people deserve a mythology. And I think honest movies, though, would be great. I'd still love to see a movie about Bass Reeves.
Oh yeah, sure.
I've watched a couple of really bad movies about Bass Reeves.
I saw a very low budget
thing
that had him, but I don't know that it was actually based on
he was what a great character. And so many great characters, but I'm not gonna quibbling with the details of The Harder They Fall would be like me quibbling with the historical veracity of Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards.
Well, I have no investment at all in the historical accuracy of any West. Silverado is one of my favorite.
Oh yeah, great movie.
Yeah, and Tombstone. They're great Westerns, but Silverado's complete fiction.
Yeah,
Silverado is kind of like the Raiders of the Lost Ark of Westerns, where it's just all of these tropes sort of thrown into one movie. Good, strong characters, good acting, good action, all that stuff. But this Harder They Fall falls short of that. I think it tries to be that and makes some. Well, I liked the music. The music in it was great. But I thought Idris Elba. It looked like they paid Idris Elba not to act in this movie.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I'm looking forward to seeing it.
It's worth watching because you're right. It's stylish. I'll spoil one part of it for you. I thought that the completely whitewashed town was a little bit much. And you'll see what I mean. I think you may roll your eyes at it because it's such an I don't know. it's a
Well,
as a directorial choice.
given given some of the westerns that I grew up watching, because when I grew up there were tons of western movies and TV shows, and they were hardly accurate, but they
Well,
were
no, of course
heroic
not.
archetypes, and there's a place for that too. We're talking about honesty, but there's still a place for archetypal storytelling as well. Like quibbling with Lady Hawk, which is the movie with Rutger Hauer and Michelle Pfeiffer. I really like that movie. I just wish that they hadn't used real place names, because that made it seem like it was historical, and that the climax of the movie hadn't had him, spoiler alert, by the way, for anybody who hasn't seen a movie that's now probably 30 years old, him throwing a helmet
through a stained glass window,
100 feet in the air through a stained glass rose window. Yeah, show me somebody. A helmet weighs 12 to 14.
His helmet didn't weigh that much, but
what's that?
His helmet couldn't have weighed that much, but
no, his helmet couldn't have hardly weighed. It has to weigh enough to be able to throw it, but not so much that you can't throw it far, right?
Right. And it shows a distinct lack of understanding of how rose windows were constructed also.
Yeah, because it would have bounced off.
Yeah.
So, but
there's one sort of technical
stone mullions in the rose windows.
Right. Yep.
Right.
There's a technical thing, just like the rose window thing in Harder They Fall. One of the trailer scenes where Idris Elba is being released from this steel box on the prison train, and without going into the story, it erupts in gunfire inside this train car, and Idris Elba is doing this sort of cool slow motion walk through this chaos of gunfire, putting his hat on, and just they show a picture of his feet as he's walking out in sort of slow motion, and all of these brass cartridges are hitting the train floor, and that they're all using revolvers. Just a little reminder.
They wouldn't, they don't eject. Now, are any of them using lever action rifles?
Well, I don't remember seeing them. Most everybody's walking around with their 6-shooter in their hand.
Right. There may have been one or two. Are they ejecting all the brass onto the ground? Are they?
No, you'll see the scene, and you'll go, oh man, this was just somebody, because this is how a modern action film depicts the chaos of a gunfight.
Just to clarify, in case people don't understand, a revolver, which a 6-shooter, Western 6-shooter was, doesn't eject the brass casing of the cartridge. When it's fired, it stays in the revolver, which has to be then upended. Those have to be injected, emptied. New bullets cartridges have to be put in. What's commonly seen when there are in modern movies, when there's a lot of brass hitting the ground, is when that's coming from semi-automatic pistols
or fully automatic,
semi-automatic
submachine guns,
AR-15 style, right? Because the semi-automatic will cycle a new round, but eject the old brass, and that will hit the spent cartridges, hit the floor. That will happen in a lever action rifle, which is typically what you would see in a movie set in the 19th century, when they're using a long gun, would be a rifle or a shotgun, which is typically a side-by-side shotgun, where the casings have to be.
Well, and since we don't know what year this fictional thing's taking place, they had lever action and pump action shotguns by the end of the 19th century. But whatever, it to me, it just like, oh geez, you're just doing it because that's what every modern movie does to
show. And one of the other things I see in modern movies all the time is the unnecessary racking of a slide.
Oh yeah.
Or the unnecessary cocking of a hammer. If you have a double action, single action pistol, you can cock the hammer and it makes it easier to fire. But
Right.
if you're racking the slide, that's putting a round in the chamber ready to fire. And if you're holding a pistol on somebody, you know, bad guy, good guy, whatever, and then you rack the slide, you're either wasn't
empty when
ready
you
to
pointed.
fire, or you're ejecting a perfectly good round. So again, truthfulness, right?
Yeah.
Veritas. So
I think we've
tangent,
digressed enough.
tangent.
Well, that's all for tonight, folks. Thanks very much for coming to our
Tangent
Thanksgiving.
right into movie reviews and truthfulness. But
Yeah.
another aspect of not the holiday of thankfulness, but the act of being thankful, as you had suggested when we were talking about this, is humility.
Yes.
It takes humility to be thankful, to show gratitude.
Yeah, that's it. To be truly thankful, to be grateful, is to show a certain amount of humility, and you are acknowledging that someone has done something for you.
Yes.
And like you said, that takes honesty. Humility always takes a certain amount of honesty to be able to recognize for yourself that you can't do it all yourself. You need help once in a while. And so,
well, and going back to the pilgrim mythology, they were thanking God. I don't know that they thanked the Wampanoag people for showing them how to grow their crops and all the other things that they thanked them for, that they
I don't think when the pilgrims showed up that they were completely unfamiliar with agriculture, but I mean, certainly they were introduced to new crops, famously maize, and corn, but they had corn in Europe by then. And
and in fact, some of the Wampanoag spoke English, because they'd been dealing with Europeans for 100 years, and some of them had been to Europe and came back and actually knew the people who were behind the Pilgrim's voyage. So apart from the way that they are often depicted, they were cultured in their own culture and knowledgeable, because I don't imagine that those pilgrims were bilingual with
no,
the
certainly
Wampanoag
not
language. But the pilgrims were thanking God. I don't know that they thanked the Wampanoag.
No, well, who knows?
Who knows?
It's not part of the myth, certainly.
Yeah.
Although maybe in some more secular pageants, the pilgrims thank I remember being taught that the pilgrims were taught to bury dead fish with their corn as a fertilizer. And okay, wow, neat.
And how far apart to plant it and how deep to plant it, and
which also points out that the Native Americans, the Wampanoag, as you say, and there was a Narragansett, and there were some other tribes in that area, but they were also by then familiar with agriculture and were not simple hunter-gatherers and nomadic like the Western Native Americans were more of. Northern and Eastern American natives were pretty civilized. They had agriculture, they had permanent settlements, they had like you said, though a lot of them, like you said, had been wiped out by an epidemic. And it's unclear where the epidemic came from, but
exposure to Europeans for 100 years would have had some
if it had been 100 years, they might have developed an immunity by then.
They might have, but they didn't necessarily repopulate that quickly. So
there's that.
From a really low level of population. it's um, something,
Well, well,
something, and
we've gone back
something.
to the politics of Thanksgiving, and we were
Yeah.
talking about just thankfulness and
Yes.
showing humility to.
Oh yeah, and I am thankful that my grandparents were able to escape Europe, and that there was a United States for them to come to,
Mhm.
because otherwise I might not be here. And
And and they believed the myth of freedom and equality when they left Europe.
well, an opportunity, yeah, and they certainly encountered problems. My one grandfather, I heard this story. He had to, they had a large dog, to a large guard dog, to protect their house and store and family. Whenever my grandfather went out, he carried a stick with him, and he had a revolver in the house.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, my uncle, who was the last of his generation to still live in my grandparents' house, got rid of the revolver my grandfather had, which he would have purchased in somewhere the late 19 teens, early 1920s. And that would have been a nice thing to have, a nice
Yeah,
keepsake to have of my grandfather, who was nice to me, but apparently beat my uncles. So there you go.
there you go.
At least he didn't shoot them. So
Well, there's that. And they didn't find the gun and shoot themselves. So
right, right.
some responsibility was shown there, I guess. I don't know.
Yep.
But well, and still, even so, obviously, I sort of cite flippantly the myth of equality and opportunity, but there were opportunities that did not exist in a Europe that was still mired in you know, hereditary wealth and
Right.
not that we don't have such thing here.
Well, and in fact, we're returning to that in a way that's getting worse.
Yeah.
If you look at the charting of, say, from the end of World War II until 1980, productivity and income rose at a steady rate among all wealth classes.
Yeah.
And since starting in 1980 with Reagan, productivity increased, wages have stayed flat, but the wealth of the 1% has increased dramatically.
Has soared.
Yes. So there's somebody said that people support policies that enrich the 1% because they don't think of themselves as poor. They think of themselves as temporarily embarrassed millionaires.
Yeah. Right. Well, and that's sort of part of the myth that has grown out of a real
Horatio
history.
Alger, the Horatio Alger myth, pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Well, the idea that if you work hard, or you have a better idea, that you can make it, you can make your mark, and you can amass a fortune in this country.
Right.
That may have been true once.
Yeah.
But law after law after law, legislation after legislation has been piled on to make that harder and harder. And the gig economy and the internet have flipped that script a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's a roll of the dice. Has
Yeah.
more to do with luck than actual quality. You know, nobody is coming up with a brand new innovative makeup line, or the more people are making money simply by embarrassing themselves publicly
Well, I'll
than
give
actually helping society.
yeah, I'll give somebody like Rihanna a lot of credit because she made her mark first as a singer
Right.
and performer, but she started her own fashion and makeup line and the lingerie and so on, designed for people of all body types, men and women of all body types, and it's been enormously successful. And I give her a lot of credit for that. It's a really
And
smart.
that's, it is. And I don't want to take away from somebody who has parlayed what they've accomplished into a fortune necessarily.
Yeah.
But the idea that she built her fortune on her celebrity,
She
not on
did.
her ability to do. She didn't develop a clothing line that took off because it was amazing.
Right. It was based on her celebrity and her ability to promote that. I think, though, and there's shades of difference in this, but the one of the Kardashians who has a makeup line and was touted as being a self-made billionaire.
Right.
And I'm thinking, self-made,
Yeah.
that's the old saying of, you started on third base and then thought you hit a home run.
Right.
Oh, you parlayed a $200 million inheritance into $1 billion. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, give me some of that and let's see what I can do with it.
And I think, and that whole Kardashian thing, if we're going to open that one up a little bit, is this new Kylie Jenner show. You seen this? This is like the
I
last,
didn't even know there was a Kylie Jenner.
and that's the frightening part. This is like the last most awkward white kid left in the family. How can we make him rich? Well, we'll give him his own show. He looks like he has no particular talent, no particular worth outside the fact that he belongs to this Jenner Kardashian family. And the ads show him in this sort of awkward position and all of the sisters and women behind him. Like they're going to promote the last member of their family who isn't filthy rich on their own, so that they don't have to support him anymore, is what I get out of it.
Well,
I hope we'll make you 100 million and then we can forget about you like we've been.
I hope he's thankful for the opportunity.
I would be, I'll tell you what, if I had the whole Kardashian family putting me forward so that I could have a fortune of my very own, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a lot that, and I admit that I do think about during Thanksgiving what I'm thankful for. And there's a lot. I'm thankful for health. I'm thankful for family. I'm thankful for the opportunity to do something like this, to write and to speak and to teach and to do the things I do. And that I'm thankful that I had the ability to have the multiple careers I've had over the years. And yeah, I think it's worthwhile understanding, just like humility is an honest appraisal of what you're good at and what you aren't good at, rather than false humility or false pride. I think being thankful for requires honesty and humility in that sense, that you're honest about what you can do and what you can't do and what you have and what you don't have.
Right. I find myself most often thankful for forgiveness.
I can see that.
Yeah. I thankful that
Yeah.
I've been able to survive all of the bad choices I've made.
Well, yeah.
And ended up I can't complain about my current situation.
Yeah.
I've got a wonderful wife, and I never was interested in a big family, particularly. I come from a small family, and we're not particularly close. So that's not something that I find myself missing much. Um, but I get to experience it sort of through my wife's family because she has a pretty large family and is very close with them. So
Mhm.
it just becomes an extension that I'm not particularly responsible to. And, that works out okay. It's just enough. It's enough for me to appreciate it without it becoming burdensome. And
And I'm grateful for the family I do have that I've connected with, and stay in contact with. And I'm grateful for the family of choice that I
yes,
have, my friends. Um, and I think that's good. Um,
I'm pretty thankful for this crazy SCA organization that we both have belonged to for decades.
yeah,
Um, it has become my circle of friends. It's become the grounding for hundreds, literally hundreds of relationships over the years that I found to be very gratifying. And as I've said, when some subset of us have gathered together, that I appreciate the SCA for its sort of implicit goal to generate gentlemen.
yeah.
I
Well,
don't know. I don't.
yeah, I'd say I would degender that to, it's not just gentlemen, it's gentle persons. It's
Well, but see, I don't feel a need to degender that because more men need to be gentlemen.
yeah,
Women,
okay, yeah,
that's certainly we can degender, and so it does create people who are mindful and thoughtful,
yeah,
and the chivalric virtues do pervade the organization to one depth or another for both sexes.
yeah,
But I'm saying that in particular, more men need to be gentlemen, and we as an organization do a pretty good job of reinforcing that to our membership.
yeah. I would agree with that. Certainly not without its challenges, but it's going to
No,
be.
nothing's perfect. We're all, I
Yeah,
mean, it's made up of imperfect people, right?
yeah,
So it is what it is. But it's kind of stated goal, at least, is something that a lot of us cleave to. Our good friends and the people we
yes,
respect and hang out with take it seriously, and
yeah,
that's what I'm thankful for, is that we have people that are this isn't a game that we put on and off. It's a lifestyle that we are choosing to try and live up to for many of us. And those are the people that you and I mostly respect and
yeah.
admire and hang out with. So I'm very grateful for that. I don't know that without having found this organization, what what kind of person I might have turned out to be.
We can speculate an alternative history for you if that would be of interest.
Well, that may be
I think it would involve a spaceship and an eye patch, but
perhaps. Certainly I could. Although I don't know if I've taken as many opportunities to lose an eye that I've already taken in the SCA.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think that I've said before that the chivalric virtues are the most concise summary of the values that I was raised to believe in, um, but expressed in a different and I think more accessible way than reading the entire sayings of the fathers or the Talmud or any of that, which often is contradictory, but that's okay too. Yeah, I think it's yeah. I think one of the things I'll take a little more nuanced version. I'm grateful that I've been able to apply the learnings of my experiences in the SCA to my modern life, and
Yes.
my experiences in the modern world to my SCA life. And I think that that has been a great gift to me and a great opportunity. And what do they say? Opportunity plus preparation equals success. So
Yeah, I agree.
um,
The SCA has colored my view of the world in mostly positive ways. And part of it is, it may be, a sort of rose colored glasses that I've very consciously put on. Um, Certainly recognizing the flaws in the organization and the people who populate it, but but as I said, that the stated goals, the things we all sort of pace, if it's just lip service, at least if we keep saying it to ourselves. I've said the SCA serves me the way church serves a large percentage of the population. It gives me the things that church gives to most people: community, ritual, um,
values.
values. Yeah. The rules to live by sort of come with the chivalric virtues that,
Right.
for me, are born out of my participation in the SCA. And that, because I think, but it's also, to me, means more, because it's not that I didn't grow up in the SCA. I wasn't indoctrinated, I didn't sit on my mother's lap in the pew and listen to the preacher tell me what I needed to believe. And, and then, so it's just a habit to believe and go to a church. I discovered this thing as an adult with all of what values I had already in place. And I joined it for a particular reason, and have gotten so much more out of it than I originally required of it, that it has taken the place of a religion for me.
And I, that's fascinating, really. And I think that I often talk about the virtues and the values I was raised with, and I find them. um, Alan Sherman's story about Sir Greenbaum notwithstanding, I find that it's the expression of the chivalric virtues is completely compatible with and in keeping with the virtues I was raised with.
Yeah, well, I don't think we would readily adopt them if we weren't inclined to them in the first place.
I have seen people change
Oh yes, yeah,
because of their exposure to these ideas, and that's something that gives me hope, and something I'm thankful for too, to see that, to have seen firsthand validation of what I believed, that people can grow and evolve and improve, because I've seen it happen. And that I'm grateful for that, because otherwise there's no hope for any of us.
yeah, yeah. So, we've probably done our time here.
I think we have, and
We've ended on a good note of
yeah,
personal exploration,
yeah.
and I am thankful for this opportunity. I'm thankful for the podcast that we're doing together, so that we have more regular contact now that we are living a little further away from each other and don't see each other as often as
Yeah.
we used to,
Yeah.
back in the golden age of Cinnabar, where we saw each other twice a week,
Yeah.
usually.
Yeah. Yeah, this is good. And I'm I will be grateful to dig into the turkey tomorrow that we found a turkey farm in Livonia with free range. They're just in Livonia, and they raise city. For those of you who aren't familiar, city in the
suburban Detroit.
It's a turkey farm, free range turkeys, and all natural. And I found this place online. We went and bought a turkey. It was great. I'm looking forward to trying it. This first year we've tried them. It's now.
And is the turkey getting along with your cats, or what? Have you killed it yet, or what?
the turkey, we're keeping the turkey separate from the cats. Hank the Basset Hound was very interested, but the turkey is in its own special place right now. Brining.
Okay, gotcha.
And I'll be making an apple pie tomorrow too. So, yeah,
not pumpkin.
I've made pumpkin pies before. They're okay. I prefer my apple pie, and so everybody else seems to as well. So my apple ginger pie. So
interesting. Too bad I won't be able to join you.
Yeah, no, another time.
Some other time. We'll get together again.
Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours.
Thank you, and you as well.
Thank you.
And thank you all for coming, and please like and subscribe and share and all those seasonal things. Right? This is the season to share. So share our podcast with your friends, because we should not make it any money now. This is all out of the generosity, our chivalric virtue of generosity, that we're providing this incredibly valuable.
And the fact that we've been doing it as long as we have is a demonstration of fortitude. So
that's true. We need to bring some more people. We need to have some more interviews now that things are opening up a little bit. We need to do some more interviews and get some other faces in here.
Okay.
So that people aren't having to look at us every time.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of interviews for my forthcoming book, so it'll be interesting. Yeah, I think we should.
Okay.
I think we should. So
we'll look into that after the holidays. We'll sure people will be looking for more things to do. In any case, we will see you next time, and until that time, be thou
a good night
and true.